Over the past number of weeks and months, there has been an extraordinary output and commentary on the centenary of the 1916 Rising in the press, on the television, in the radio, and in our bookshops. There is a far stronger emphasis in 2016 than was possible at the time of the 50th anniversary in 1966 to move the focus out of the GPO and away from principal figures like Patrick Pearse and Connolly. In 2016, there has been a sustained effort to reveal, to reconstruct, and to reinterpret neglected aspects of the Rising. So things like the role of women, and in particular, what was going on in the localities. In the heady days before the Rising, two key episodes took place here in Kerry. The Aud, the German ship with a cargo of 20,000 dated Russian rifles, was captured by the Royal Navy and scuttled. And Roger Casement, who had travelled by submarine to prevent the rebellion, was captured. Now, this sequence of events shaped the entire course of Easter week, and sometimes this is forgotten. First, it prompted old Matt Neal, Chief of Staff of the Volunteers, who had been deceived about the planned insurrection by the Military Council of the IRB, to issue a countermand calling off manoeuvres for Easter Sunday, the 23rd of April 1916. The countermand drew plans for the Rising into utter chaos. And secondly, the authorities drew all the wrong conclusions from this, by assuming that Casement had arrived to take command of the Rising, by assuming that there were no weapons for a Rising to take place, and by assuming that the countermand would be obeyed. And so, faithfully, they decided that they would postpone the arrests until Easter Tuesday, and the rest, they say, is history. Now, I'm particularly struck in recent weeks by the interest shown by Irish school children at primary level and secondary level in this aspect of our history, and this is certainly very welcome. History, as it is written and researched and presented to a popular audience at the beginning of the 21st century, is all about identity. It is about who we are and where we have come from. Now, I hope that this prompts, and I hope that you, in your capacity as voters, might prompt the next government, whoever or whenever that comes into being, to secure the place of history on the Irish school curriculum. This is something that has gone under the radar in our commemoration. As a schoolboy myself, which was neither today nor yesterday, in Skullvera, and I see three of my teachers, in Ita, and Declan, and Jerome here tonight, and also in the intermediate school. I was particularly fortunate to have a succession of teachers with a great interest and knowledge of local history. And for this reason, I was aware from a very young age that the first fatalities of the Easter Rising occurred here in Killorglin. I was aware that Con Keating from Carsaveen, Donald Sheehan from Newcastle West, and Charlie Monaghan from Belfast were drowned at Ballykissane when their car took a wrong turn near St. James's Church. Now, this drama, which unfolded in Killorglin on Good Friday 1916, is not particularly well known outside Killorglin or outside Kerry, and it's certainly not as well known as it should be. Thanks to the efforts and the historical skills of Tom Doyle, Ballykissane has at last and finally received a specialised historical treatment, and we must applaud Tom for this. Like all good local history, the Ballykissane Tragedy relates local events to what is happening at a national and even international level. Tom recounts with great verve the extraordinary second decade of the 20th century, which saw the militarisation of Irish politics, the outbreak of the First World War, without which there would certainly not have been an Easter Rising, the determination of the IRB to use the international crisis to win an independent republic by force of arms, and their negotiations with Germany for aid. Drawing on a range of primary sources, particularly statements to the Bureau of Military History by some of those who were centrally involved, Tom has reconstructed the efforts to contact the odd, which, unknown to the volunteers in Ireland, did not possess a radio. Now, the history of the Easter Rising is peppered with interesting vignettes, and none more so, I would say, than the history of the odd itself. It was originally a British freighter constructed in Hull. It was captured by the German Navy, and it was repurposed in the German Navy and labelled the Libau. It was then, when it was sent on its mission to Kerry, masquerading as a Norwegian vessel called the Odd. Now, Tom teases out and explains the complex chain of events in Germany, and he also untangles the confusion surrounding the expected arrival date of the Odd in Kerry. Particularly impressive is the wealth of biographical detail uncovered about the individuals involved in the mission to Kerry. Now, Tom, for instance, reminds us of just how many young people had to seek work in Britain and the United States, of how the imposition of wartime conscription in Britain forced many of these young people to return to Ireland, of how wireless telephony and radio were the cutting-edge technologies of their day, of how rare it was to see motor cars on the roads of Kerry or Killorglin, and how extraordinary it was to see one, let alone two cars on Good Friday 1916. And he also reminds us of the bravery and the commitment to their principles of the Irish volunteers. The tragic events of Ballykissane, the fate of Tom McInerney, the driver who survived and swam ashore, the recovery of the bodies, one of which was not recovered until October 1916, and the coroner's inquest are all vividly narrated by Tom. It is fascinating to read that right now, when we are in the middle of commemoration mania, that it took 3 years before a cross was erected over the grave in Drumavalla of Donald Sheehan and Charlie Monaghan. Tom's closing chapter is perhaps the most arresting. It relates how the political animosities and divisions of the Irish Civil War overshadowed efforts to erect an obelisk to commemorate those who had lost their lives at Ballykissane. It was originally hoped to erect a monument in 1936, 20 years after the event. In the event, the project was delayed and the monument was unveiled in Easter 1939. In 2016, on the centenary, thanks to the sterling efforts of the Killorglin Centenary Committee, there has been no such delay. And Killorglin's significant contribution, and it was significant, to the 1916 Rising is being imaginatively and appropriately commemorated. Tonight, in music and in print, tomorrow, in stone and in more music, and on Saturday, in spoken word at a public history symposium. The Ballykissane Tragedy is an engaging and important contribution, not just to the local history of Killorglin, but to the wider historiography of the Easter Rising. And I'm very proud to declare Tom's book launched.